Hi, it's Cara back. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm in the Dina Wakley Ledger Journal with this another amazing image from Collage Soup of Frida Kahlo. And what I wanted to do was recreate those flowers. Now, I'm not really a person that uses a lot of watercolours, but I thought for this project I would try my best. Here I am just applying some gesso to my page because I tried to put some watercolour on and it wasn't quite coming up as bright as I'd hoped. So I decided to gesso my page first. So I'm using Pebeo Studio Gesso in white, and now I go in again with my watercolours. So looking at the background of the image, there was quite a bit of blue around her face and obviously the flowers as well. So I've gone in with a very pale blue. I will list all the codes for the colours in the description. My watercolours are Faber-Castell Watercolours. So they've all got names and codes, but I will, as I said, list that for you if you're interested. But, you know, basic colours, you could try and recreate it with whatever you have. So I'm putting a little bit more gesso onto that blue just to kind of make it a little bit more light, or make it lighter, sorry, and drying that off before I go in with my next layer. Obviously putting the gesso on top of the watercolour does kind of help to seal it as such, so that when I add the pinks and reds and purples that I'm going to add for my flowers, they shouldn't mix with the blue. I was doing very loose shapes for my flowers. If a little bit of blue got mixed into it, so be it. It's my journal, and you know, I'm only creating for me and obviously for you guys to see, but it doesn't really bother me if it mixes a little. However, I felt to add that gesso just to try and help that not happen. I really wanted the flowers to be some, you know, nice pinks and reds and some warm tones of those purples. So all I'm doing is very loose, sketchy circle stroke flower shapes in my journal, using a variety of purples, reds and pinks. I believe there's a few little orange bits in there too, but I'm just kind of trying to dry each layer so that I can layer up the colours. Now, as I said, I'm not really a watercolourist. I just use them how I feel to. So there are probably 100 different ways to do this a lot better than I am. However, this was what I was doing in my journal and it seemed to work. So just continue basically to layer on my colours, add some definition and some shape to those very squiggly rose type flowers. And the image that I had from Collage Soup, the flowers were very loose, so I was trying to emulate that. Obviously my flowers are nowhere near as good as the ones in the image. However, I keep trying. So yeah, I'm just going to leave this a minute whilst I continue adding layers and layers to those flowers, drying them off. I am using a normal hairdryer to dry these off. It is on the cool setting. I don't have a heat gun here. I'm currently in Morocco, so the hairdryer is my best option, but I am very careful not to heat it too much. Obviously, I use acrylics a lot in my journal and they are plastic, so I have to be wary of that. But this hairdryer does work to help me dry my layers. So I'm just going to keep adding my image back into place to see where the gaps will be, and I'm going to add some more flowers over the other side. So I'm just going to let you watch me create the mess that is my flowers. And then I'll talk about the next steps. For those of you that don't use watercolours, I am dabbing off some of the water using a paper towel as well as drying the watercolours. This helps lift some of the colour and also just means that there's not as much water on my page, so it's easier to dry, and I'm a little bit impatient sometimes, so I like to get that dried. So now I'm happy with the flowers as they are at the minute. I will add more detail to them. I'm just using a glue stick to stick my image in, and I used a paper towel to help me kind of flatten out any creases that there might be. But using a glue stick, I tend not to really get creases. I only really need to flatten them if I'm using PVA. So now I've got my Dina Wakley Media scribble sticks out, and I am trying to add some detail to those flowers. I'm using Blackberry, Ruby, Magenta, and then on the leaves in the background I use a little bit of lime, a little bit of turquoise, and a little bit of sky. If you've not used the scribble sticks before, they are water soluble, so you can activate them using water. So just be wary of that if you're going to try and add layers over the top. So this is my homemade matte medium. I can't get any here in Morocco, or I can't in the shops that I've found. So I'm just using this to seal my image so that I can draw over the top of that as well. So here I've gone back in with my scribble sticks to enhance and tie the flowers on the image into the flowers that I've created on my page. Therefore I'm using obviously the same colours from the scribble sticks to hopefully make my page look a little bit more cohesive and not like I've slapped an image down on some badly watercoloured flowers. I am quite happy with this page in the end. It's not quite what I imagined it was going to be, but when I use watercolours I never really get what I imagined. Here, what I noticed was in the image there's some very black fine lines around some of the flowers, like to create the petals and the, you know, the rose shapes. So I'm just gone in with my Uniball Fineliner black marker pen, and I'm doing some very squiggly lines. As you can see, I'm holding the pen at the very end. This helps me be more loose with my movements, and therefore the lines will be quite sketchy, which is kind of the vibe I'm going for, especially based on the image there. So I've done that over all the roses and the leaves, and just a little bit in the background, just as I said, to kind of tie all that together. So this stencil is one from Paper Artsy. It's a Tracy Scott stencil. It is PS388. I will link this in the description, but now I've got acrylic paint out. Now these are also Faber-Castell. Those colours are Permanent Green Olive and Phthalo Green. I'm probably saying that wrong. I can never say that colour. But I'm just adding some green leafy fronds, leafy images, whatever you like to call them, to my page, coming out from those roses there in a mix of the two colours. I blend them together sometimes use the one colour, just to give me some more leaves, more leafy images. So I'm just slightly sort of adding a little bit of water and a little bit of acrylic around the flowers and the greenery to kind of fill in the gaps in the background. I really love how those leafy shapes work on this page. I mean, that's one of my favourite stencils anyway. I've grabbed my Uniball Fineliner back, and I'm just very sketchily outlining each of those little leaves, again using the pen with, you know, the very loose grip at the top, just to tie in the same sort of sketchy lines with the others. Now I've grabbed some acrylic paint to add just a little bit of definition to each of those flowers. I'm using India Red and a little bit of Van Dyke Brown, just to add the darkness to those flowers, sticking a few of those bits down that are poking it up there. Now I've got some stamps out. Now these are Tracy Scott stamps, available from Paper Artsy. My two favourites, these ones. One is like a script stamp, and one is some tiny dots. They are TSM01 and TS065. Again, I will put this in the description. Then this is a Crafters Workshop stencil, TCW261S. It's got like a quote on it, starts with "Art is," and I just love a bit of text in my work. I'm using it's the Van Dyke brown acrylic, just to put some words in those backgrounds there and, you know, add a little bit of more interest. And then I'm using my watercolours again to enhance some of the features on that face, and my white Stabilo, it's not a Stabilo actually, that's a Signo pen, Uniball Signo. I enhance the eyes, fill out the the whites of the eyes, and then as you can see I'm just doing a few sketchy lines again on the flowers, on the leaves, just to put a bit of white in there where I've added the black, you know, contrast and all that. Bit of black, bit of white, always helps your page pop. I've also added little flecks in the eyes. Now I've grabbed out my Lumo Colour paint pen, and I just pump it a little bit on a piece of plastic and use that to add some splatter to the page. I do love adding a bit of splatter, ties the page in together, or the pages in together. And I just add that over the whole page, and I try not to get it on her face. Now, I've always loved this quote. It's a Frida quote, not fragile like a flower, but fragile like a bomb. I add it just using a black Posca pen. This is a PC3M. And then I thicken out the lines and add a couple of little dots to the ends of the lines just to make that font stand out. Now, when I look back, I wish I'd have left my text like this. The black really stands out on the flowers, but when I'm finished, I add some white highlights. I wish I'd never done that because I feel that the text gets a little lost with the white on. You'll see. I may even go back in and go over the whole lot in black again to make it pop, because at the moment this text looks good in my opinion, and it's ruined with the white. But let's see what you think. Here I start adding the white, a few little dots, a few little lines, and I feel like that quote gets lost now. But this is what I decided at the time, so this is how it is at the moment. If I go back in and just go over in black, I may post an updated picture, but for now I've left it this way. So as I said, I'm just adding some lines and some little dots all along the left hand side of each letter. I just find that if I add it all on the same side, it looks cohesive. And then I also put a little line through the middle of the name for the quote. I've got my Stabilo All pencil out now. I go round the edge of the page to create a little border. Obviously, because that page is half a circle, I want it to stand out on the page behind, especially once that page behind is painted. So I just use a wet wipe and my finger to kind of activate the pencil, and it gives it that really nice smudgy look. So as you can see, I've got a wet wipe down the bottom, and I'm just dabbing my finger on the wet wipe, and that's my finished page. So I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, please give me a like, subscribe to my page and share, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.